and a very, very warm welcome to all my friends who are listening today. And needless to say, thank you so much for your time. I know how tough it is for you to take out this busy hour and a half. I hope you find this meaningful. We're very excited today. I have a stellar panel post this, but I thought before we jump into the panel, uh, I'll probably take about around 25 odd minutes to walk you through an area which is very topical. Everybody seems to speak about it. The area about how do we manage work in this constantly evolving space. So before I do that, I thought let me take a step back and understand where we are and where we were and where we're headed. So at the cusp, at the very beginning, it's important that we understand, what digital transformation entails, because you've all been important members of this entire transformation within your organization. You've been the catalyst, you've been the force behind that, and I have had the good fortune of tracking this. And what we've noticed is the KRA or the objectives of transformation have also changed over the years, right? But at the same time, we thought of, why don't we give it a structure? Because digital transformation may mean different things to different organizations, to different sets of people, right? So this is our attempt of, bucketizing it into three pillars. The first is business processes. The second is business strategy. And the first is internal and external stakeholders. Why we thought of doing this is because, by and large, when we spoke about digital transformation in the past, there was a lot of emphasis around business strategy and processes. Not to say that they are not important anymore, but historically, for the last 10 to 15 odd years that I've noticed, right, there's been a lot of focus around, how to enhance business agility, ensure that there's business continuity, you achieve the business outcomes that you were aiming at through digital transformation initiatives. You automate more processes, you have better workflow management, so on and so forth. But a very important element that has come up of late are your internal and external stakeholders. And again, once again, if I deeper on point number one, what we seem to notice is we've always had a lot of focus on external stakeholders, which are our customers, right? But it's the internal stakeholders who are our employees. They have taken the center stage. I'll make this point more prominent by sharing this slide, which talks about how employees are the center of this entire transformation. So if you see here, this is part of a survey that we did amongst people like you, who like I said, are leaders of digital transformation in your respective organization, and this is what comes across. So, and this kind of in a way, works as the driver for many of the DT initiatives in the organization. So, very importantly, there's a lot of emphasis on improving customer experience, right? And if you see, very closely followed by employee productivity and employee experience. Now, why this is important to be called out here is because, like I said, issues and areas around business agility, process transformation, and operational efficiency will always remain important, and which is why we are at the first place an organized entity. But what is important to note here is the entire employee piece, be it productivity or experience, that has taken a fair shift, and that is to a large extent, I'll probably contribute that to the pandemic, right? And we'll take this step ahead, because if you see, lot has changed. How we look at remote work, how we look at the entire area of hybrid work has also transformed. And again, to back that statement, it's important that we understand, that essentially your workplace is as good as your workforce. And where is your workforce today? Because if you take a data point in retrospect, before the pandemic hit us, 95% of us used to go to our offices, right? Which is not the case during the pandemic, where almost the same number, almost 90 to 95% of us were working out of our homes or remote locations. And now we see a more balanced approach to this, where we see almost, if not a 50-50, maybe a 40-60, depending on the sector that you represent. But there is a more distributed workforce across your office environment and your remote locations. And that sets the tone of what digital transformation initiative we're looking at, right? And you have to, at the end, also understand one very, very important factor, that the entire process of workforce or workspace transformation is only possible when there's a win-win for both the parties involved. And the both parties that I'm referring to is, one is the employee and one is the employer, right? And both seem to suggest that this has worked. So if you see, 77% employees believe that the productivity has increased. Now, if productivity has increased, which organization would like to go back to an environment where they did not have a culture of people working from, say, a remote location, right? So as you see, as a reflection to that, we see, there's a growing trend of a lot of organizations allowing work from home as a standing hiring policy, right? So a lot of people are, many times you've seen, are constantly working from a remote location, right? So, and employees are choosing, their organizations of choice, which provide that anytime, anywhere work flexibility. So I guess, like I said, it works both the ways, which is helping us augur in, this entire concept of workspace modernization and transformation. So if you see, again, if you break down how the office has changed, and how it has gone beyond your physical offices. Very important, let me also highlight here is, when we speak about workspace modernization, by no means are we suggesting that the office is dead. Not at all. But there is an absolute definitive reason why an office exists, right? However, what is important is to find a balance between both the office space and from where you would like to work. It could be a home environment, it could be a remote location, right? So if you see, and this slide kind of gives you an indication as to what it was in a pre-pandemic phase to what it is now. So in its initial phase, people were concentrated at a particular location, because most of us used to go to offices. So hence, your entire IT infrastructure management was confined to offices. Very important to understand this, because when we talk about that, your entire IT infrastructure was to support people to work out of offices. Your security posture was provided in such a way that our data centers were protected, right? Our periphery was primarily our office premise, right? So hence, a lot of emphasis was on centralized processes, right? So office-focused IT. Vis-a-vis now, where we have workforce scattered all around. So that leads to a whole set of new challenges as far as IT management goes, and the complexity to manage such task force, right? And from a focus of IT, which is more office-driven, to employee-focused IT. And last but not least, a lot of emphasis around remote employee IT security, because it's important that the entire concept of remote work also has traversed a long way. That itself has shape-shifted from what it was to what it's now. Remote work in its previous avatar, we kind of chose probably a bare 1 or 2% of employees working out of remote location for reasons known to them, probably because of lack of that particular resource in the given geography that they were in, or to use the best of what's available in the market, right? But now, it's much more ingrained in our office culture, and we see this as a de facto standard, right? So hence, it is important to understand, how all of this impacts our digital transformation processes. So as you see, 88% organizations that we spoke to are rethinking on their IT strategies, because IT infra needs a rejig to fill in the requirements that came up due to this complete transfer of how we work, right? So you need to standardize tools, solutions that simplify businesses, and you need to rebuild your IT infrastructure to support this flexible work style, right? And as you see, because and we try to go a little deep on this to understand why does this happen. So if you see, a lot of you seem to suggest, that you did not have the necessary financial and human resources to manage this change at the onset, right? And also the turnaround time to manage all this change was also going up, right? So hence there was this requirement to relook at our IT infrastructure and see how this maps up. So at ThinkTeal, we thought through this and we kind of arrived at this four-pronged strategy that we called, which kind of gives you a hourglass view on how to achieve your hybrid workplace objectives, right? Very importantly, no hybrid workplace objective can be complete without security, right? This, as you can see, is the second most important parameter, right? Obviously, any hybrid workplace is incomplete without having this anytime, anyway work flexibility, but with equal importance given to a secured work environment, right? The other two elements are more, they are soft initiated, but given today's context, has seen a lot of rise of importance. One is that entire experience of your employees and inclusivity. And the last but not least is the improved and sustainable work policy. I'd probably like to take a minute or two to further hone on these two aspects, because when we talk about any workplace transformation initiative, you're doing this for your employees, right? And hence it is very important that they are inclusive as a part of this entire initiative. Because what the basic attempt here is to give a seamless and inclusive experience to your employees regardless of the place of work. Whether they're working from their homes or they work out of their offices, the experience should be singular and unique at the same time, right? Also, what we've also seen is with this entire, drive, and so importantly for the changing times that we're living in, there's a lot of emphasis on, creating a world of work which is sustainable, right? We are, as the IT fraternity, is known to, to be the catalyst of change across the world. But we also have our responsibilities which we need to share, right? So it is important that we entail a more sustainable work environment to ensure these work objectives are met, right? To do that, I think it's very important that you understand one important element, which is, device is your new office, right? How we at ThinkTeal kind of look at is this entire fulcrum of where my office is kind of now starts and kind of ends with the device, to put it mildly. So, you have the endpoint device, and right from the entire stage of deployment to how you support it, and I'll walk you through each of these elements to give you an idea why the new office is your device, right? Right from, having your pre-deployed applications to having a more secured environment to work in, managing a centralized process of managing the devices, and last but not least, supporting all the IT infrastructure elements, right? How integrated workforce essentially is trying to achieve is, by reducing burden on your IT teams to help them focus on the core functionalities, reducing security risk because you are getting a built-in security capability with these devices, and very importantly, the last two of a centralized process of managing these applications and maintenance of these devices. I'll walk through all of them and probably start with the deployment. So, and all of these I've given a both, like I said, both from an employee view and an employer view, right? From a deployment perspective, see, from an employee standpoint, for any new joinee, onboarding has to be smooth. So the question is, will I have to spend hours for downloading and installing a new software or solution, right? From an employee concern, will my IT team feel burdened to support a hybrid work. And I'm sure when you are going through these slides, I'm sure these are some of the thoughts that are being echoed with you on a regular basis, right? What we're trying to envisage, the future work, is a future work where, the entire onboarding experience is so seamless that when a new employee or an existing employee, gets their device, a new device or a new application, it is as good as plug and play, right? What you essentially are trying to do is, you're ready to you have a ready to use device, which is pre-loaded with all the software that is required, with minimal IT touch points, and all of this is fully automated. Because what you don't need is your IT department to feel the pressure of bandwidth just to manage this change. Imagine a world where this entire experience is digitized, and that is possible when deployment is a part of the delivery. Gone are the days when all we need is a new device, right? And we do all of this at our end, because we are all aware of all the challenges that come our way because of that, right? Moving on, very important. I mean, no discussion on technology is complete without touching upon security. So when we talk about, any new deployment or existing deployment, while that's managed, it's always important for us to know how secure are our device. Because like I said, again, taking a step back, if you remember one of my initial slides where we spoke about how the entire office is now more scattered than it previously was. Earlier, the entire office was centralized, now in a scattered environment. In a scattered environment, a lot of focus eventually goes to the endpoint, because the endpoint is where all the work is happening now. Like I said, even the latest numbers, as we seem to suggest, even if people are going to office, many of them still continue to work out of their homes almost 2 to 3 times, at times 4 times a week. So almost 60 to 70% of our workforce still is working out of their remote locations. So when you're working from a remote location, essentially your office is as good as your home. So in reflection, and most of us use different ways to connect to our office. It could be through VPN tunneling, it could be through a standard broadband or LAN solutions that we have at home. But it's very important that we ensure that we are secured. And while there are various ways of doing that, it starts, in my humble opinion, from the device, right? Having a secure, end-to-end encrypted device kind of is the first stepping stone to having a secure environment. How it helps is, A, build upon the entire concept of zero trust. This is a discussion that needs no introduction. Everybody in the business of security is speaking very, very strongly on zero trust. And zero trust, as we all know, revolves around the entire aegis of identity and access management, and provision through AI-based prevention methods. And while security is important, it is also important not to forget data privacy and protection. No security posture is complete if it's done in isolation. I think when we talk about security, we have to talk about data encryption and data protection. So that's where we see the entire workspace shifting in terms of security. Third, a very important piece, as we all know, especially when we speak about mid-market to large organizations, a mid-market or large organization, there are various ways how to define a large organization or a mid-market. It could be by the number of employees, it could be by the turnover. But in both the cases, it's fair to imagine that we're talking about a very large number of people that you're working. And like every organization, as an IT leader, right, or as a decision maker, you are given the mandate that every application or workload is not meant for everyone. For instance, you may want to provision a financial application only to your finance experts, right? Whereas certain marketing tools have to be provisioned to the marketing team, so on and so forth. And there are certain application workloads which are given access to all the employees. So it's very important to have a say and control of which application goes to whom. And that's where the entire concept of centralized management kicks in. And with centralized management, the entire experience of employee also comes in, and with the preconditioned criteria of being secured and anytime availability. So if you see, the entire concept of integrated workforce is not in isolation, but keeping 3-4 key tenets in mind. Like I said, if you take 2 steps back, we're talking about how deployment as a service can be integrated, how built-in security, built-in secure devices is important, and how you manage your this application workflow from a simpler management is important. And last but not the least, and we kind of concludes the chain of action is enhancing the support services. Because like I said, again, 2 sides of the coin. From an employee concern is, I need a turnaround time which is quick, right? Will my support service be able to resolve it quickly and understand what my problem is? And you've got to understand every device has a refresh cycle, we understand that, right? And there is a certain stipulated period of time when you need to go for a refresh. But if your support services are extended in a more organized and predictive manner, you're in a way effectively increasing the refresh cycle. So as a result, there is a significant cost saving involved, right? So like I said, it has to have a tangible benefit from an employee and an employer to make sure that you have these support services. So when we talk about support services, now support services could be a basic vanilla flavor where you have a central repository through which you raise a ticket and your issues get resolved. But I think support services have also come up a long way, right? So you have an all-in-one PC lifecycle management. You have, concepts like AI and ML and predictive analytics for quicker turnaround time and query resolution. The entire process gets automated, and also if you notice, you have a user using, say, a device for the last 1 to 2 years. There is a certain pattern which emerges, and when a pattern emerges through AI, through ML, through predictive analytics, you know what is to be expected, say, the next quarter or the next time when say an end user approaches you, or for the matter, how to mitigate the problem before the problem arises itself. So hence the terms of service becomes better and query handling becomes quicker. So in a nutshell, if you see, an integrated workforce has the end device at the center, but having 4 key elements. 1, deploying these devices. 2, securing these devices. 3, managing these devices through a central console. 4, helping support these devices. So if you have this, I guess to a very large extent, you're kind of managing this entire shift of workspace, because we strongly believe, device is a new office. And to make it effective for your organization, I leave you with 8 points, which kind of gives you the basic blueprint of some of the key checks and balances that you need to make sure for the right workforce transformation. Starting with your workforce demographics. You need to know how scattered, because this is not a one-size-fits-all. You may work in a very regulated work environment wherein you need to have all your people working into an office environment. Then your workforce strategy needs to be altogether different. But what in our experience of talking to people like you, most industries today are working in a hybrid environment, right? Second, you need to gauge how experienced is your IT team, and not just experience, what is your bandwidth that is involved, right? Can I manage all of this in-house, right from this of deployment to securing to managing and to service my end customers, which are my employees? Can I do that? Third, what are the costs involved in the entire process, right? And do I have a productivity trade-off in outsourcing it to a specialist who does it on my behalf, right? And last but not least, do I need, what is my posture when it comes to security and my device strategy? Do I have all the checks and balances in place to ensure that my workflows transformations are effectively achieved. Because it is very important that when we do all of this, we have the necessary buy-in for leadership. Because, however, having said this, it's my experience with talking to both CEOs and CIOs like you seems to suggest that there is a lot of convergence in thought, and I think they are empowering you to take the right direction. So I just thought I'll probably leave you with this, and I look forward to our panel, like I said in the beginning, that is soon to follow. Thank you so much for joining in.